It's 6 o'clock this Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Happy Valentine's, everybody. Valentine's evening. I'd like to open this meeting of the City Council, the City of Montgomery, into session at this time. We do have a quorum present. Brother T.J. Wilkerson is not here this evening. I'd like to invite you to turn off your cell phones to avoid any interruptions in our meetings, please, at this time. And we appreciate people listening in from the outside and watching from the outside, and those of you that attended, thank you for taking an interest in our city. I'd like to invite you to join me now in the invocation. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for being our Creator God and creating us in your image, to know you and to love you and to learn to love others as well. We just ask your grace and your blessings upon our meeting, upon our city, our families, our institutions, that you would grant us wisdom to move forward in wise and prudent ways. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Salute to the flags. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To the Texas flag.
On the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, to Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
We do have one person signed up for the Citizens Forum, but he's desiring to save that for when we get to item 4, so we will allow that to take place. All right, consent agenda item 1. We have an A, B, and C. Item A of item 1, approval of the amended previously adopted minutes of City Council meeting 12/13/22. Letter B, approval of the minutes of the City Council meeting January 24th, 2023. And letter C, special City Council meeting 2/6/2023. It's the Council's pleasure as far as approving these items.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Casey. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second is by Pat. Motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving consent agenda item 1 as written and stated, say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed, say no. And we will approve the consent agenda item 1. Consideration and possible action, item 2. Consideration and possible action on an interlocal cooperation agreement between the City of Montgomery, Texas and Montgomery County, Texas for the Buffalo Springs Drive and Lone Star Parkway intersection improvements project.
Thank you, Mayor. Dave is going to be leading the discussion on most of our items tonight, so I'll defer to him on this and other items.
Okay.
Mayor and Council, you may recall from the budget process that the city budgeted money for both the construction of or the participation with the county for the construction of the intersection improvements at Lone Star Parkway and Buffalo Springs Drive. Right now, that's still contemplated to be a roundabout or a traffic circle. That's where the design is headed. The county is currently working on the design, and this agreement is what lays out the framework between the city's responsibilities or its rights and responsibilities and the county's rights and responsibilities under the contract. The total amount is for $250,000. Just as a reminder, we budgeted $265,000 for the construction and $40,000 for the engineering. So our total cap is $250,000. As with the last agreement that they sent over, the interlocal agreement, the one clause that stuck out was they wanted the city to assume all ownership of Lone Star Parkway that's within our city limits. That is a valid conversation to have with the county. It's a road that not only helps city residents, it primarily helps the county residents who are looking to go from 105 up to 1097. Again, that's an important one to have, but it shouldn't be a part of this agreement. So you'll see that in addition to a couple other revisions, that clause has been struck. And we Commissioner, any thoughts or questions, or otherwise, staff's asking for a motion to accept the interlocal with the changes proposed by staff. And so the next step, as in order to do that, is the agreement would go back to the county then for their action to the commissioner's court.
I just want to reiterate, we had discussion privately with engineers as well, that when I spoke with Commissioner Walker and his people before, just to ensure that this was going to go forward, you know, the way that was talked about with them committing, you know, basically half of what was projected at that time to be the cost for this project. But I made it very clear that that structure needs to be solid enough on the outside. And so I just want to reemphasize that to you so that when we swing out with these 18-wheelers, there's no soft there. I don't want to see cinder there. It's going to get torn up. So toward that end, we basically agreed, can the county get this structurally solid, lasting years and years, get that, and any beautification, the city can make it pretty, so to speak, you know, aesthetic appeal for us more. But in any event, with rising costs, let's make sure we do it right, because that is a massive amount of volume of traffic north, not just around the city, but a north thoroughfare, like you said, for 1097. So let's just make sure we proceed and do it right and hold them to the rightness of the, you know, mechanics to it. Any other questions? Okay, I entertain a motion.
I do have a question, I'm
Okay.
sorry. If the contract is, or the interlocal agreement is accepted tonight and you send it back over, then how long are we expecting to wait for any plans or anything to be seen?
I do not know the answer to that, but I can follow up and find out. The county attorney had sent this to our city attorneys, so we've not had a direct conversation with, well, you know, what's your schedule after you get the approved agreement? I'll find out, let you guys know.
So we're not sure that if we accept it tonight, we're not sure that they'll even accept it with our changes.
That's exactly right.
So the other thing that Byron just stated was we were going to pay half, so it looks like we're paying more than half in the project. Is that right?
The bids, just to my understanding, he was still getting the bids in as of a few weeks ago, but it's also my understanding that they have put this in their budget. They're wanting to move forward on this sometime in the spring.
I don't believe that they have let the project get bid yet, or at least we've not seen the drawings yet. I know they're working on estimates, on soft estimates.
Maybe it was a kind of a soft estimate that makes it to where I'm not sure that they'll be able to do
It
that.
says here, the preliminary project estimate for Precinct 1's engineering study intersection in late 2021, so a year and a half ago, roughly a year and 4 months ago, $390,000. So we give it 10%, right? Give it 10%, that's another 40 grand on that. We're at 450,000, 440,000. We're paying 250 of it. That's not half.
Right, so the way the contract is worded, and I'm looking on page 2 of the contract, which is 22 in the packet, it requires the city to pay for 50% of the cost up to $200,000.
Right.
Okay.
So we're capped at that.
Okay.
But we are capped at 250, right?
Yes, I can assure you it's not going to be 390. I guess that's where I was coming from. It's going to be significantly higher than that.
That also includes design fees. For the 390, I'm not sure if that included design fees, if that was just construction, but the city's portion is for design and construction not to exceed $250,000.
So it's the engineering study, so I'm assuming they had to design it to make a bid on it or some kind of an estimate.
Correct, and we have not received or seen any plans for the roundabout yet, but we will be receiving them, reviewing them, providing any comments to the county as well.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I thought At one time, it was going to be a red light. They've decided not to consider the red light anymore.
Can't move enough traffic.
That was a matter of discussion. And it's just my observations from what I'm seeing now and projected to see later on. A four-way stop then becomes a light, and I don't think you've solved the problem. I really don't. And part of that is the width of Lone Star doesn't allow for, in my view, enough room to put enough cars in that left-hand turn either way, east or west, to alleviate that blockage right there. So we're about to add hundreds of homes in that area from people that I walk by and say, can you fix the traffic? And so this has been a main focus of mine in that area to do that. So I finally convinced them, yeah, roundabout makes sense, keep traffic moving. And you already have a natural roundabout at, where is it? CB Stewart, around that area, you already have half a roundabout there. So traffic light on 145, roundabout keeps it flowing. Traffic light on the north side, it just makes sense to me. But if you put a light there and throw up those homes that are about to come, I think you're right back where you were with the four-way stop.
So where, does anybody know where the official roundabout is closest to Montgomery?
The nearest actual roundabout is probably going to be 1375 and 45 there. That would be my,
New Waverly area.
that would be my guess.
Navasota has one too, I think, don't they, downtown?
Not that I have
Or on the
seen.
perimeter of town somewhere? Maybe not.
I don't know. I know they're all over Louisiana.
Yep, they function pretty well. Any other questions? All right, entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve the ILA with the changes recommended by staff.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
I second.
Second by Pat. Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 2 as stated, interlocal cooperation agreement as stated, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries 4-0. Item number 3, consideration of possible action on a resolution of the City Council of the City of Montgomery, Texas, adopting and verifying a percentage-based homestead exemption for ad valorem taxes and homestead exemptions for individuals who are disabled and individuals who are 65 years of age or older. Can we make that 62? Just kidding.
Mayor and council, you've seen this item before. So each year, we are required to affirm our, or to change our tax exemptions. You see what we have here now. Right now, we currently have a 20% homestead exemption, which is the maximum allowed by state law. We offer a $50,000 exemption for over 65 and a $70,000 for disability. So the action before you tonight, the resolution before you tonight, is going to either affirm or change those. Staff feels like, or I don't feel like there's anything wrong with any of it. Certainly, this is a decision that the council would make if you wanted to go up. Again, there's no going up on the homestead. It's as much as it can be. But you've got the ability to look at the over 65 or the disability and see there kind of what they do, to the tax revenue. If you have to answer any questions you have.
And this is what's currently in place, right?
This is what's currently in place today. That's right.
And all we're doing is adopting it for 2023, and it'll have to be done every year thereafter?
So the attorneys have advised us that while the Texas tax code does not require us to affirm them if we're not changing them, it's probably easier to adopt this resolution than to argue with the appraisal district about why we don't have to submit this. So even if we're not looking to modify those exemptions, it's easier just to pass a resolution, adopt this resolution. The language in it does allow us just to resubmit it to the appraisal district, so we shouldn't have to go through every year. But at the same time, it's good for council to hear and think about those tax exemptions annually. See if you want to make any changes to them.
And like Pat said, does this have to be for the over 65 and disability? Does that have to be done every year? Okay.
Note, like I mentioned in the report, the over 65 and the disability, those don't stack on top of one another. You can qualify for a homestead, but you can pick either one if you're over 65 and disabled. It would behoove you to take the disability one because it's a higher amount.
I move that we accept the resolution as is written without change.
We have a motion by Pat, do I have a second?
Second?
Second by Cheryl. Motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 3, resolution as stated, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Item number 4, consideration possible action on the creation of a historic structure property tax exemption. I believe we have a speaker, Mr. Tamburello.
Yes, sir.
Would you like to approach the podium and state your name and address, please? Mr. Palmer, do we typically, in this situation, still put a 3-minute on this? or-
No, I would just.
Okay, no problem.
Well, I was trying to pare
That's
it
okay.
down. I pared all of this stuff down to this.
Okay, very good.
My name's Frank Tamburello. I live at 801 College Street here in Montgomery. I'm a new resident as of April of 2022. I moved into one of the oldest historic homes here called the Magnolia House at 801 College, built in 1864. And I'm here to ask for a 25% tax exemption that's been continuous since a 1992 Montgomery City Council meeting that was approved on in 1992, that exemption be granted. It's been continuous since then, to my knowledge, every year from the appraisal district, with a renewal form given to them. But they do need the approval of the city for that exemption to be granted. That's really all I have. I'm just asking for the exemption. I appreciate the time that you have, and congratulations to Mr. Palmer on his appointment.
Thank you.
Administrator.
Mr. Tammer, do you currently also have the school district?
The school district, the Montgomery County School District approved it. Also, they had a trustees board meeting in 1992, the same time as the Montgomery City Council did. I'm sorry, it was a little bit earlier. And they approved it, and they have approved it. Today. Not today, but they have approved it for the exemption. So it's been approved.
So you do have an exemption from the school district
From
at
the
this
school
point?
district, yes.
Okay.
At what rate?
I'm sorry.
What is the rate of exemption?
25%.
Which is higher than the state mandated minimum.
Well, you know, these historic homes do not get any exemptions from the federal government, the state. The only one we would be able to, and they're the historical marker homes. The only one we would be able to get an exemption from would be the city and the taxing entities here in Montgomery County, namely the school district and the city being the two largest. And that's really about it as far as the exemptions go. They've been continual since the 1992 time frame. To the house that I'm in particular, has only had 4 owners. I'm the 4th owner in 160 some odd years.
You say it's been continuous for your particular home. Are all the historic homes receiving that day?
No.
No.
So
It's the only one.
that's kind of what the discussion, I guess, is for, is to consider, if I'm correct me, right, is to consider that the historical structures that are on the historical register. Is that correct?
It could either be a city designated historic landmark, you guys can really set what the guidelines are, what the criteria would be for an homestead exemption, or I'm sorry.
For the
not a
exemption,
homestead
right,
exemption,
right.
A historic.
Historical, and the county, the Montgomery County Appraisal District has already, I believe you already have a form or something to the city, or something like that.
Do we know how many historic districts, historic structures in town would actually apply? Because we all know that the church and
Churches are tax exempt already.
they're already tax exempt already. So how many structures other than Magnolia, possibly Hodgepodge Lodge, how many structures actually are in the town?
My guess would be in the range of about 7 or so.
That
About
many?
18 to 20, if.
And is it going to be residential only or
So
commercial?
that's kind of what I want to talk about is, instead of a historical structure as being limited to residential. Because at the end of the day, if you have a business, you need to compete, right?
Right.
Whether you're in an old building or a new building, you still have to compete.
Because like, Carol, what is the Colonel's old house over there? Colonel Bates's old house, I forget what they call it. But anyway, that's a business, and then Hodgepodge is a business, and so there's several that are businesses.
Yeah.
And this proposed tax would be, this would be laid on top of what we are already offering as far as homestead and...
Yes.
Yeah, it was 65.
Okay.
Yes, I might add that the businesses are able to claim a federal tax exemption, because the only exemptions that are allowed for historical building is that it produce income, and the federal government allows an exemption for that. The historical homes, as much as they contribute to the fabric of the community, get nothing. And I have to admit, I haven't had time to go fishing yet, because I've been busy the last year taking care of this place. So they are quite a challenge to maintain. We do the Christmas home tours during the month of December. The Historical Society is an integral part of that, and I work with members of the Historical Society, and that happens on a yearly basis, and I do participate in that, and think I should. So that's where I am. And I would like to ask y'all to consider that exemption granted.
Thank you. I guess from a management perspective, kind of fill us in on the broader request here.
So if you guys are open to the idea, we didn't want to put a lot of work into coming up with a framework for this, but we've already got, some decent feedback on, focusing on the residential properties versus the commercial properties. If this is something that the council would like to entertain, then staff will put back, or will put together and bring back to you kind of a framework that you could then adopt to be able to grant a historical exemption.
So you'd have all the particulars of what actually is considered a historical structure here in Montgomery, not just because it had a plaque on it.
Right, it won't be ready to adopt, when we bring back, but it'll be, again, giving you guys a set of options. Is it, 100 years old? Does it have to be a city designated historic landmark or in the historic preservation district? Obviously, it needs to be a residential structure and used for residents, just based on what I'm hearing. So we've got, again, some options in terms of some of those parameters, but ultimately they're going to be what you guys feel is a suitable threshold to receive an exemption. I will caution you that the 1992 action, it had, as part of the conditions was that it had to be open half a dozen times for tours, and had to participate in the historic. You cannot put those types of conditions on a tax exemption. Basically, once it's granted, it's granted. So the criteria need to be fixed where the age of the house does not change. If it's in the historic district, it does not change. But say if someone said, well, I'm not going to do the home tour this year because mom's sick and I've got to go, you wouldn't be able to take away their tax exemption for that year because, again, of some type of a performance condition that they did not meet.
But I think you do have to impose some type of criteria. Maybe it was rehabilitation fees or a minimum amount there, but you have to place some type of criteria on an exemption that's going to be granted to a very small segment of the community.
Right, right. I mean, it is, I don't know that you could say, well, you've got to show receipts for up to $3,000 this year type thing. I'd need to find out about that, but certainly, in any of those conditions that you can set, and then once they're there, they don't change. And that's what I don't know about.
Right.
Something like the idea of, there's got to be X number of dollars put into the home to receive the exemption. I need to clarify that.
So the other thing, the question comes to remodel. So say I own this house, it's 100 years old, I come in, all I did was tear it down to the studs, tear it down to the frame, nothing left of the original structure except for the foundation, and rebuild it. But my foundation is 100 years old. So, right, New Orleans runs into a lot of things like that, right? When you're in a historic district, you have to maintain a certain look.
A facade on, that would be consistent with the age of the house, so.
Also, on the agenda, you proposed a rate of anywhere between 25 and 50%. I think we need to stay as close to the state mandated.
What I'll say on that real quick, just to clarify, the 20% is your maximum for a homestead exemption.
Yeah.
But in the attorneys have sent over a couple of ordinances that were just draft ordinances from other cities. They were doing like a 75% exemption, which felt like a lot to me. I don't mean to say it doesn't cost a lot to maintain those homes, but that was at least more than what I was initially thinking in my mind. So,
Well, I think that certainly if we're going to entertain that thing, that we need to have further discussion on all the parameters that would go into it.
you all would like me to bring back, if you're interested enough to hear kind of the proposed framework for it, then we'll get that together and we'll bring it back to you. From my own perspective, I don't know that just doing one historic home in the city is necessarily the right way to do it, even though it's been done that way since 1992. I feel like there should be.
So, yeah, I don't like this one's special. So if we have historic homes and the others qualify, then they qualify, right? I'm not against the the exemption. I just think that if we're going to give the tax exemption, then we need to spread it out and make sure that if there's other people out there that obviously the homes are hard to upkeep. They're not easy to upkeep. But at the same point, we don't want to come in and completely demolish the home and, hey, I've got the bones of an old house, but it's not an old house, right? So,
Is there like a deadline for an application on this?
Is it April 15th? Sometime around.
I think for the city, they were supposed to, may I speak?
Sure.
I think for the city, I thought they were supposed to get the letter back to the appraiser district by March the 1st. But I could be wrong. April the 15th would be the other date, but you'd have to confirm it through the appraiser district.
I'll verify with them to make sure that the homeowners have to have a letter from the city. So the way that the homeowner set outside the city, if the city said no, but the school district still said yes, and what he would do, there's a form at the appraisal district that he fills out, and he just gives them a letter that says that we're a taxing entity, and we agree to offer, X amount of a deduction, an exemption on those taxes, so. But I'll verify that date on this, so we know.
The last item on the agenda did say we had to have that in by March the 1st.
Yes. Yep.
On those three.
Right. It's standard, yeah.
But on this other one, we're not sure yet.
Right.
Okay. All right. So we don't need a motion or anything? We're just going to agree to...
Enough to hear some more about it, we'll bring it back next week.
Dave, item 3 with the zoning status, we've been speculating back and forth that needed to be more clear anyway. Am I correct that because of the word or, designate historic preservation district or as a city landmark that's been problematic, and we needed to get that done anyway to get some consistency, or what?
There is some confusion over a city designated historic landmark. It doesn't have a state, plaque on it. It's not registered with the Historic Commission. There was a point where someone in the city felt like there was some historic significance either to the property or to the structure that was there. But the city designated is the piece of that has caused.
But it's all still, items 1 through 6 are really just all interwoven, though, right?
To some degree they are. I mean, I can see, I know of some homes that are older that would likely qualify for this, but they're not a city designated historic landmark. They're not within the historic district. So again, that would be the criteria that the council sets on, if you want the historical exemption, you need to have some level of historical, zoning overlay, to this property. Again, I'm not saying that's right or wrong. That would be my sense if you were going to grant, a historic exemption that a property should be, adequately protected under the city's historic preservation ordinance. So,
Okay.
Can you give an example of a house that you're aware of here in the city of Montgomery that would have a city exemption but not necessarily a historic exemption?
So one city designated landmark would be the house there just behind the post office on the corner of Houston and Stewart Street.
Oh, Billy Woods' old house.
Right, so that is,
Sorry.
there's no state designation on the historical aspect of the home, but it is a city designated historic landmark, so it follows all the rules of the historic district, even though it's not within the historic district.
And then Minnie's house right behind it would have that same, the little shed back there, Minnie's house.
An example of a home that we know has got to be older than 100 years, but is not a designated landmark or in the district, is the house on Horsham Street. I'm embarrassed to say her name escapes me now, but right next to Becky Hutt's, there's the big, older home there with the big.
Lisa.
But it actually got moved here.
Yeah.
Well, right,
And I don't think it was here when zoning went in and they designated those.
And there's those other houses right across the street, those ones that moved up from the heights, so again, we
But
need to.
they all got moved here.
Right.
They're not
Decide, well,
official.
Is this a 100-year-old house enough, or does it need to have some story, some tie to the story of the city to be eligible?
True.
Those are things I would decide.
Okay.
I can think of a few more now that you brought that to mind.
Right.
Does that sound like something you could probably do for the next meeting so we can kind of act on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But you're going to find the date out first and make sure that we haven't missed the date.
And, to the point of the March 1st date, that's to be included. So if the appraisal district, when they get that form back for our standard exemptions, which affect a lot more folks in the city, the reason they want it back by March 1st is to start including that in their preliminary totals that they send to us. So they, start to estimate, early in the year, here's how many exemptions you guys have. This is, what it's going to do to your tax revenue. So the sooner they have those exemption amounts, the sooner they can start to vote those in. give us an accurate number, so when we go to budget season, we've got a general idea, or we've got a very good idea of, what we can expect that ad valorem tax revenue to be.
So if you're going to do this, we are going to say that it is going to be for residential and not commercial, correct?
I think that's, the direction that I've got here tonight. I think that, again, that's, y'all's decision to make, but I think it sounds like.
I don't think commercial should be, it should apply to commercial.
No.
All right, any further discussion? If not, we've given the feedback and we'll move on. Item number 5, consideration possible action of amendment to the development agreement between the City of Montgomery and Pulte Homes of Texas LP addressing side yard setbacks in Montgomery County.
Here, again, this is all the Pulte development agreement. This is 309 homes up in the northeast corner of the city. The development agreement did stipulate the 45-foot wide lots, did not address the building lines. So right now, they've got an approved 45-foot wide lot. But if they follow the county code, they've got to stick to a 10-foot building line, which leaves a 25-foot wide building envelope. And when, as I put in the memo, they did talk about a smaller lot size when they gave the presentation back over to some, but with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian. Yeah. Keep that up and I'm going to step right back.
Thank you. Hey, Mayor, thank you, Council. I just wanted to, this is more of a kind of a cleanup item. This was something that should have been addressed during the original development agreement that was approved at the end of last year. It was not, so as we were going through our planning process of our first few sections, was brought to our attention by our land planner, and then we got with Dave and staff. So we went to P&Z last week on Tuesday, and they approved the condition. I'll touch on that in a second, but as other communities, specifically we'll look at Terra Vista, which is a very close neighbor of ours. They actually have a plat, do have 5-foot side setbacks allotted on their recorded plat. So we would just like the same consideration with that. As far as the condition that P&Z approved it with, I've got some pictures I can show them to you, and if you would like. But if you look at some of the other developments that do have the same similar situation, there was no requirement to not have the air conditioning units on the side of the homes, which was one of the statements that came up last week in P&Z. So we would like to. Our request would be to get the 5-foot side setbacks, and just to be clear for all members of council, 5 foot is not, there will still be a minimum of 10 feet in between homes. This is not 5, they're not going to be right next to each other. So you have a lot, 5 foot, 5 foot, so you have a total of 10 at minimum in certain places of our development. Because of the product size, we're going to be doing, there will be 15 feet in between in certain areas, just depending on which lots are purchased.
Okay. Comments? Questions?
Why would they, you attended the P&Z meeting, sir?
Yes, ma'am, I did last week.
And what was their reasoning to say no air conditioners and generators and things like that in the way, in that 5 foot?
I'm just going back over to you because I wasn't involved in that. So one thing I would like to speak to, if you do drive through some of the communities that do have this exact same setup, you can see, if you drive down the street, you can see, like I said, I've got pictures I can show them to you, but I know you've got other business to attend to, but you can see nothing but air conditioning units in the front, in the yards in the front, because their fences are placed all the way at the back of the homes. Pulte, we do not do that. We bring our fences as far up to cover up that equipment, so it's not an eyesore from the street. I think it provides a much better street scene for members of the community, for for the overall look at the development. But I'll let you speak for one of the questions.
So with regard to the accessory equipment and things like that in the side yard, that's just an option that the council has when they look at this. It's a condition that you can place. One of the things that I've heard with a smaller side yard, if you put an air conditioner in a small side yard, say a 5-foot side yard, you've got about 18 inches left, between the fence and the AC unit. So from either getting, something as routine as a lawnmower, around to the backyard, or a first responder, who's trying to get into the backyard, those are the types of reasons or rationale behind why some cities don't allow that type of equipment.
So is there a problem in the subdivisions that we allowed this? Is there a problem that you know of?
Not that I've heard of. I think the one exception that I know of would be Lake Creek Village, Section 1. The big difference there is it's a 0 lot line on one side with a 5-foot building line on the other. And so when you have one way in and one way out of the backyard, as opposed to, say, if you've got 5 feet on both sides, then more than likely that equipment's going to end up on one side of the house. It's not going to be split in between both. But nowhere where there's a full 10 feet, again, if you do the math and you got 5 and 5 on either side of the property line, if they each have an AC, you're down to about 2.5 feet for the drainage, to get in between them.
So to come on that also, so your fence comes all the way up. Is it a shared yard between all the houses and the fence just runs across all in front of them? Or is there a fence at 5 feet on either side?
No, there's a fence directly down the
Right,
line.
so when you put a 3.5-foot air conditioner in the middle of a 5-foot thing, it sits about a foot off the house. You can't even push a lawnmower past it. You can barely walk by it. The reason I know that is one of my rental homes is built like that in April Sound.
Okay.
And it's absolutely miserable to try to get to the backyard from the front yard. Because the fence is there, I get it. They have their fence and we share the fence, but when you have the stuff next to the house with 5 foot, you can't get by it. So to the point of emergency services, you're climbing over it.
Well, I mean, what I can tell you is that in almost every community that we build in, and we're a very large builder in the city, as well as our, some of the larger builders who are our competitors, we all do this. We all have the same type of formula where you got the house, you have 5 feet on either side, and the AC unit does end up on the side because the rear of the house, generally speaking, is going to be your master bedroom, a covered patio, a bunch of windows on the back. There's not enough room to even put it at the very, very back of the house successfully. So.
Right. So, and this goes back to why I don't like 45-foot lots. But there's that saying that says just because it's the way we've always done it, doesn't mean we should continue to do it that way. Right? Yeah. So that's where I stand with that. I don't know. What's the moment? Just locked up.
Authorize the amendment to allow 5-foot side yards.
But any of the discussion, none of it's built in yet.
Their motion is to approve the request with that caveat,
With it?
with the accessory not allowed on the side yard.
Yeah, it's just locked up, so I don't know what's wrong.
Well, we have a recommendation on the 5-foot side yards. We also have somewhat of a caveat here with a requirement to place AC unit, not place it on the side, right?
That's
So-
whatever you guys would like to do on it, but you don't have to do both of those. You do one or the other. And so my recommendation to P&Z, and again to you guys, would be if you're uncomfortable with 5 feet, the easiest way or the one way to kind of balance the two would be making sure that you've got 5 feet clear space and then down that side. And to the point that I made in the agenda report, we've not done that with any of the 5-foot side yards that we've got.
Well, I understand, the Pulte Way and whatnot, and I happen to live in Hills of Town Creek, and do think that it would look better with the fence in front, but I'm able to mow my yard, and he's able to mow his yard and we can walk through the swamp together, you know, and whatnot. So I see where you're coming from, but I also see there's some obvious concerns that the council has, rightfully so. And we've already expressed, as Mr. Olson has said, a desire to kind of standardize these lots and kind of slow the roll, if you will, on these variances as a whole. So I'm open to whatever recommendation somebody wants to move on this with these things in mind. It's unfortunate this wasn't part of that original agreement. I don't know how that worked there or whatnot. So that's unfortunate. Just hear me on that. But I do see this side, and I would err on the side of caution in terms of emergency services and kind of feeling the pulse of the council and other individuals in the community that are concerned about these variances as a whole and these restrictions. So anyway, somebody make a motion.
I'll make it. I authorize that I move that we authorize the amendment to the development agreement to allow the 5-foot yard with the conditions set out by P&Z.
Okay, we have a motion by Pat to allow the 5-foot exemption with the condition recommended by the Planning and Zoning Committee to not allow the accessory equipment on the side yard. We have a motion.
I second.
And we have a second by Casey. Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 5 as stated with the caveat to not allow accessory equipment on the side yard. All in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed say no. And the motion carries as stated 4-0. Item number 6, consideration and possible action on the following resolution. Resolution of the City Council of the City of Montgomery, Texas, approving the allocation of any and all opioid settlement funds within the state of Texas resulting from the Texas Opioid Abatement Fund Council and settlement allocation term sheet.
Ms. Rob?
Mayor and Council, in the packet you will have a resolution. This is, if I give you a little bit of a background, the Office of the Attorney General has been leading the way with the opioid settlements. And these settlements are as a result of the national and global litigations against manufacturers, pharmacies, and distributors of opioid class drugs. These litigations have also been driven by a coalition of governmental agencies and committees that view the plaintiffs as contributing towards the global opioid crisis. So the Texas state has already settled with Johnson & Johnson, Teva, and Endo. We did not participate. However, the Texas Comptroller has not yet distributed or allocated any funds from that settlement. So we've been encouraged to, if you authorize us to participate, and we could still be allocated some funds from that settlement. You also have in your packet the new, recently settled in 2022 for Allergan, CVS, Walgreens, and Walmart. It's pretty substantial amounts that they have litigated and settled for. There is, you'll see in your packet, a very large participation, so what we get may be very minimal, but it's worth us opting in and to see if we can be allocated any funds. The term sheet is what you're actually adopting, and then you will also have the ability to opt in by signing the subdivision forms for each litigation.
Nikki,
Yes, ma'am.
so it shows that Montgomery would be getting $1,884, and that the county, Montgomery County, would be getting $2 million something other. So would we be eligible to get some of the county stuff too?
That I would have to defer to the attorney to answer.
Good question.
It depends on how the county runs their program, but yes, typically they'll have amounts that they utilize for their own programs and amounts that they provide to the subdivisions within the county.
few municipalities. So who runs this program in the county?
No, in the county. It's actually the Texas Comptroller, but I'm not sure who has the funds. There is an abatement, opioid abatement fund council. I don't know if that's federal level or county level.
So is it run out of the county attorney's office, or how's it done?
Right now, I've been communicating with the Office of the Attorney General, state level.
Okay.
So the other thing that unless I misunderstood, is that the funds need to be spent in a certain way, a particular way?
That is what I have already requested of the Attorney General, because if, I know at the state and federal level, they have to be used in the prevention or the abatement of opioid crisis problems. For sub-school subdivisions, I've requested that very question from the OAG. I'm waiting for a response.
What it looked like to me in some of the documentation was that they had this giant pot of money, and a lot of it's going into a trust that, it's kind of going into a couple different subpots, if you will. And some of the money is to be given out just as in consideration of past costs that cities have suffered because of opioids, the increased police work that they've had to do, just increased costs on city services to assist people. So there may be a small amount that you just get sort of as compensation for your past costs. And then there's another large chunk that goes into paying for programs that you would have to apply for, more like a grant. Like if we want to set up some sort of outreach program, you have to apply for that money to fund that, like you would apply for a grant.
Any other questions?
And there's a deadline on getting this back to the Attorney General's office?
Yes. For once you get the most recent one that we have 90 days to submit, but the first one we didn't participate, which was back in 2021. So we weren't considered eligible, but because the funds have not been allocated, the OAG is recommended we submit anyway to see if there's some of that money that we can still receive.
And then what is it, to just cut through there was several pages of things that it released them from. We're signing off on a whole bunch of releases.
Well, basically, you're saying that you as a city would not sue these companies for any kind of damage claim related to the opioid situation.
From this point forward, any future damages? Can the state go back and do it again?
It would be from this point forward as well.
That's pretty standard for one of these class action type things though, right?
Right.
That's why you join it, so they can.
Presumably, they've corrected their bad action and are no longer, pushing opioids on people the way they were.
Yeah, they actually, out of this, just an interesting fact that now the distributors and the manufacturers actually have to go through an independent clearinghouse, and so that all these drugs are tracked much better. And pharmacies are subject to way more oversight, so you don't have certain pharmacies dishing out more opioids than they should.
So the numbers, they seem like a lot, but in reality, right, the cost to the communities and stuff that's a fraction, right? It's a fraction. So they got off cheap.
questions? All right, I entertain a motion.
Make a motion to adopt the resolution as stated.
Motion by Casey, do I have a second? Seconded by Cheryl. Motion's debatable, minimal, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving the resolution as stated in item 6, say yes.
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 Anyone
Yes.
opposed, say no. Will approve the resolution item 6. Consideration and possible action to authorize the city administrator to execute the contracts 2 for grounds maintenance and right-of-way mowing and lift station weed control.
Mr. Montgomery.
All right, Mayor and Council, we went out for bid on mowing. Got 4 bids back, which was a good number. We are recommending staying with Cody's Lawn Service for both contracts. If you remember 3 years ago when we did this, the last round, we decided to split the contracts, give smaller companies a chance to make biddable parts. Cody won both of them last time. We're recommending to stay with him. He was the lowest bidder on the grounds maintenance, and he was the second on the right-of-way, with a difference of $1,420. And with his familiarity with the city and great track record, we'd like to stay with him. He is here tonight. If you'd like to ask him any questions or tell him what a great job he's doing.
Been doing a great job. It's one of the reasons we rebid at Hills of Town Creek, and you had that as well, and does a great job out there as well. One of the few areas we get little to no complaints.
When we talk on the phone, he usually makes the comment that it feels like it's been forever since he's talked to me, and I always remind him that's a good thing.
Is that the call next year?
Yeah.
I do have,
I've been pleased.
I have a question about the grounds maintenance. So the bids were all over the place on the grounds maintenance. So so the bid put out was that, okay, we're requesting a certain service, or are they coming back with this is what they'll provide?
Certain service, yeah. It goes out specifically to describe mowing, weed eater trimming, picking up trash. There's certain parameters that they're on the same playing field.
Okay.
When they put in a bid. 3 of them were in the same ballpark. One of them was a little high. Same on the right of way. There was 3 that were comparable, and then one that was we'd like to stay with Cody's for another 3 years.
So it's a 3-year contract?
Yes, sir. And we do have the provision in the contract that enables us to come back once a year in case something needs to be changed. If we had a facility, whatever, and it gives council a chance to review it every year. Gives him a chance to, if he, like 2 years ago was fuel, when fuel costs, if he asked for fuel surcharge. We'd like to keep it that way.
Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we authorize the city administrator to execute the contracts for grounds maintenance and right-of-way mowing and lift station weed control.
A motion by Cheryl, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Pat. Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 7 as stated, say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries.
There you go.
Item number 8, update on an ordinance regulating dry utility installation in public rights-of-way.
Mayor and Council, we are bringing this to you just as an update, so you can see kind of the thought process that staff and consultants are working through on this dry utilities ordinance. And just for clarifications, the dry utilities that we're talking about are things that go in after water and sewer. So your telecommunications, your natural gas, electricity when it's underground, those types of utilities. We currently do not regulate or permit those utilities in our rights of way. And to set up the process is mainly to keep people from making a mess or getting into our infrastructure, and then we've got no way, no recourse to go back to them to even know who was doing it or be accountable for the damage that they may cause. hope to have an ordinance in front of you this meeting. In lieu of that, we've got sort of a framework, again, that we're working from, draft ordinance ready to put in front of you.
Now, based on what we've asked for, long range, several weeks ago, this is just the part of what we're trying to do, put some teeth to it. It's not the big, this is specific to the utilities. We still intend to be able to have some sort of, and I believe some sort of surety bond or something that guarantees when developers walk away, and my light pole is supposed to be at 300 and we measured and it's 475, we got to have somebody say, come in here and put some light on Brock's Lane, So this is just a piece of that, but we are moving in that direction, right? And we're still crafting that ordinance, is that correct?
So we haven't answered the questions, otherwise, we're just an update for council to see where we're at.
And other cities do have an ordinance regulating this, and you've looked at them?
I know other cities do. I don't know I don't know the ratio of how many do and how many don't. Most larger cities will likely have that ordinance. We haven't had a lot of dry utilities going in the ground out here, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So as areas experience growth, you start to see more of it. So the ones that have dealt with a lot of growth are likely enacted in ordinance like this.
So you are looking at other cities' ordinances, or you have not?
Yes, and that's what, we are pulling from other cities' ordinances.
Okay. Thank you.
So at the bottom, it says other considerations. When it says establish a penalty for damage not reported or work done without a permit, how do you work that in to this utility permit ordinance?
So say if we ran across somebody on Lone Star Parkway installing a telecom line without a city permit, it would be a fine.
Okay.
But you are going to have them do performance bonds, correct? Is that how you're working it into that?
Right, certainly, the bonding is going to be a piece of it to ensure that, again, we don't have to argue with them about whether or not, because we don't want them to fix it. If they say they bore through our water line or something like that, it's something that, Mike wants to be in control of, how the repairs made. But, we don't want to be in a situation where the guy says, well, I could have done that for half that cost. If you don't want to pay, we'll go pull your bond.
Good.
Does the city require performance bonds now?
For infrastructure, say like public infrastructure?
Yes, I thought they did.
Very good.
Thank you.
Any others? All right, thank you. Item number 9, consideration of possible action on engineering services contract amendment number 1 for the City of Montgomery CDBG-DR infrastructure project.
Mayor and council, this is related to the GLO project that's currently underway. As we've talked about since sometime last summerish, the Anders Branch portion of the project, the engineers anticipated being able to get what's called a nationwide permit from the Corps of Engineers, which is essentially where it meets a general set of parameters and they give you a permit and you go on your way. An individual permit is where you have to get a permit specifically for that project. And so the Corps looked at the engineering studies that we put together, said, no, this needs an individual permit. So we've got the Corps telling us you're going to spend another year with us. We've got the GLO telling us that if we don't wrap this project up, they're not going to get us any work. So what this does is we now have taken the Anders Branch portion out of the scope of work of the grant. This is just dialing back the money under the engineering contract, so we're reducing the engineering contract by $58,000 to account for the fact that they're not going to be doing the work to finish out the Anders Branch portion of the GLO project.
So we're not going to do the Anders Branch portion of the contract?
Okay, so question, if we were to do the Anders Branch by itself, You're saying it only cost 58,000?
This was the engineering for it. The construction was about 700 or 700,000 was the actual construction portion for that. We've gone in, what we have now is a survey where we asked the GLO, hey, can we go ahead and try and obtain the drainage easements? So even if we don't do the work, could we use the grant money to obtain a drainage easement for you? He said, no, you can't, because you're not. You told us way back here on your application that you were going to do actual work. If you're not doing actual work, no, we're not going to pay for you to get that access easement.
So I am very confused on what the project actually is, or was.
Sure. It was the sanitary sewer and storm drain work, so they relined or replaced as needed the sanitary sewer on MLK, McGinnis, and Baugh in Community Center Drive.
Okay.
So they did all the ditch work and installed a generator at water plant number 3. So those were the 3 components, were the sanitary sewer and the ditch work along those roads, the cleaning out of Anders Branch, and a generator at water plant 3. That was the original 3 big buckets for the project.
But this isn't for the project, this is just the engineering costs.
This is just the engineering cost right now, that's right. So we're reducing that contract, so all of the paperwork lines up.
And what was the rationale, the reason that they're not able to do what they originally
more
agreed to?
technical
I'm not clear
on
on that.
Yeah.
So with this specific grant, there is a hard stop and date to the grant that all work has to be completed. With having to go off that individual permit that Dave was talking about, we wouldn't have been able to finish the project on time. If you're still doing work past that hard end deadline of the grant, it can jeopardize the city's eligibility for the grant in general. And so to avoid jeopardizing the entire grant for the city, it was decided to remove this portion of the grant from the scope of work so that the city could still receive the grant money for the sanitary sewer improvements and the generator. It all came down to, unfortunately, time and the scope of work that needed to be completed. It just wasn't going to be possible for the end date.
Why wasn't it completed by the end date?
Yeah.
Originally, it was decided that the city was to go out for proposals for a drainage analysis for this area. The drainage analysis needed to be performed before the work could be completed to help build the scope of work. That added to some time delays, and then once the engineers got into design a little bit further, then the Army Corps came back and said, no, you need an individual permit, which then pushed the deadline from about 90 days to a year for permitting, and so that delayed it significantly as well. And the GLO kept coming back with additional restrictions, cutting back on what was actually possible.
How long ago did you start? When did you start
Which portion?
the project?
From the beginning.
The proposals for the drainage analysis were completed in 2021. I believe proposals were received at the beginning of 2021. And then from there, the drainage, so BGE completed the drainage analysis. And then from there, the Quiddy, Jennifer Carter continued working through the project, trying to navigate GLO's requirements, the Army Corps' requirements, and the other regulatory requirements, trying to also get the best benefit for the city based on the results of the drainage analysis.
So the original requirements were not in the GLO grant proposal? They weren't spelled out like a CFR?
No, when the city applied for the grant and submitted this, the understanding was not that an individual permit would be required, and the GLO's requirements were not made clear until we were getting further into design and continuing to work with GrantWorks and additional restrictions, requirements throughout the light.
What will be the repercussions if this isn't completed?
So what we've talked about, instead of this, and unfortunately being removed from the grant, is potentially working to desnag the channel, go through and just do underbrush clearing. That is about the most that we can do without having to get an Army Corps of permit. Anytime you work below, since this is a regulated waterway, working below the ordinary high water mark requires a permit. And so without having to get a permit, we can desnag and clear out some of the underbrush, and that will help, certainly.
But it won't fix it though.
Not to the original scope that the grant was originally hoping for.
And since we removed it, how much is it gonna, if we had to do it on our own due to flooding or storm or something like that, how much is that gonna cost the city?
To do this exact project on our own, the cost would be the same as it was with the grant, the 600, 700,000.
600, 700,000, so we missed the deadline and okay.
But you have to get a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers?
Correct. And that's where the project team got hung up, was in the timing.
Again, I'm concerned about what the repercussions if we had another large
Flood.
flood, what it would do to the project that is already completed.
So the grant was from the 2016 floods that we had, or that was the reason that the GLO had offered, I guess, kind of the grant opportunity. There were no homes in the city that flooded. I can't say that it's not going to rain tomorrow and somebody's not going to flood. But, no one has flooded because of the current condition of Anders Branch. It's a channel that, certainly needs the clean out, done to it. But again, I don't know that any, without being able to say, that I know exactly what the weather's going to do, there's not anybody more at risk today than they were before we started the project.
That was my concern, is this going to impact,
But I still think that that's not a reason not to address that. You have a channel that's blocked.
Right.
And whatever the city can do to alleviate that, I think that ought to be your plan B,
Right.
if you will, and I'd like to see that in some official form.
Right. Kind of the thought is, and I know that the mayor had talked, with Garnett, the engineers had talked with a couple folks in terms of, again, kind of what could we do to go in and clean this channel out? Not doing any earthwork, not doing any grading, all the stuff that of course it's a year's worth of permitting, just to get the debris out of it, because it's more of a, an issue of the debris gets to 149 and causes a backup there, and then the water just starts to build there behind it. So if we get the, just the thatch and the debris out of the channel, then that will go, a very long way, again, without having to jump through the core hoops of.
And in the meantime, as far as the Corps of Engineers, the permitting, so now you go looking for money elsewhere, and the process starts all over again? Because we're losing that 58,000, right?
No.
No.
It was 100% grant, so everything, was funded by the grant, but the engineers lose out on that, the extra, engineering fees because they're not doing the work.
The opportunity cost last year is about 650,000.
Right.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said the opportunity cost loss here is about 650 grand. We're getting 58,000 back, but due to delays and slower progress than was expected, it's 650 grand.
Remind me which of the branches is Anders again? Is it the one by the butane tanks? Or is it
So
the
that was
one?
Town Creek, so Anders Branch is one just north of there,
Just north.
right by the curve,
Okay,
and, the intersection there by Old Iron Works.
right, okay,
Simon.
all right. So we are thinking that we're gonna try to find money to to do that project? Or we haven't discussed that?
Whether it's city funds or whether it's another grant that we can find, again, cleaning out that channel is a valid goal, just not with the conditions, again,
Right.
I mentioned to you guys, it's really frustrating.
It is.
For us, when it's a drainage-related grant, and that turns out to be the portion that seems like we could just never get done. And
Right.
every few weeks, it's, well, here's another $15,000, engineering study that you need to, do to be able to even then apply for the Army Corps permit.
Is that the Army Corps of Engineer requirement?
When you start, working with them, so you've got the GLO on the one hand saying, here's, this is the framework, and the Corps says, well, this is our framework. And it's like, neither one of those are talking. It's, well, it takes me a year to get a permit from you. I didn't have that long to do the entire project, much less, on the timeline.
It has been frustrating, besides the obvious bureaucracy that there is in all the moving parts, but also whether you go to HGAC or you talk to this person or that person for all this time, we've been trying to get some help with this. It's where you rank. And if you don't rank high on that list of priorities, by having several flooded, you get moved down the ladder, and so there's that on top of the bureaucracy, and it has been very frustrating.
So I understand the bureaucracy is very difficult to deal with. I was a contractor for the Army Corps of Engineers for 8 years. That's all I did was Army Corps of Engineer work. They're very difficult. But one thing I learned is that when you have your ducks in a row and they recognize that you've done everything, it does move very quickly. Moving on from that, I did for the past 10 years, 12 years before I moved to another project, I did permitting for the Gulf of Mexico through the federal government. Another very painful process. But again, when you have your ducks in a row, check the boxes and move on, right? So 2 years is significant time. I do understand that it can be difficult, but 2 years is a long time.
All right, any other questions, comments? I entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve Amendment 1 to the engineering contract as presented.
Motion by Carol, do I have a second?
A second.
Second is by Casey. Motion is debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving amendment number 1 to the engineering contract as presented, say yes.
Yes.
Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries. Item number 10, consideration of possible action on change order number 2 for the water plant number 3 generator addition project.
Mayor and Council, this is related to one of the other legs of a GLO grant. This is the generator at water plant number 3. What you have before you is a request for change order number 2. So a little bit of back history. On January 26th, we had startup performed for the generator at the water plant site. The generator ran very smoothly. However, during construction, it was found that the auto dialer currently has 8 channels on it. It was originally understood to have 16. Contractor discovered that there were only 8. As it currently stands, there are not enough channels for each individual alarm to have its own connection. So the change order request is to install a 16-channel auto dialer so that whenever an alarm goes out, it's clear, is it a low fuel alarm, it's which generator is it for, gives a lot more clarity to the operator, exactly which alarm is going on whenever they receive the call.
There's got to be a typo in here on that amount, am I right?
There is a typo in our letter. The amount is $5,768.98.
Here. Would that need to be referenced in a motion possibly?
I would recommend
I mean,
that.
I recommend that we stipulate that $5,768.98.
Yes, and I apologize for the typo. That the $5,768.98 is the amount requested by the contractor.
Because it almost looks like 5 million. That would be a big difference.
That's correct. I apologize.
No problem.
This does not add any time to the contract period of performance. Simply an increase for the audit contract itself.
This is the second change order from this contractor, correct?
Yes, sir.
What was the first one? That
The
was
first
a,
one was for conduit in the ground. The contractor tried
That's
to
right.
run wire through this block.
that's right.
And when this is done, then are we through?
This
This,
contract?
yeah,
Just wrap it up.
yes, this stuff.
Yes. Quiddity is working to schedule the final inspection for this project.
I'll make a motion to approve the change order number 2 for the water plant number 3 generator addition project at $5,768.98.
Motion by Carol. Do we have a second?
Second?
And that's Cheryl?
Yes, second.
Gotcha. Second is by Cheryl. Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 10 with the stipulation of making the amount $5,768.98. All approve, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. And the motion carries as stipulated. Item number 11, consideration and possible action on approval of the certificate of substantial completion and commencement of the one-year warranty period for the sanitary sewer and drainage improvements project on Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Drive.
Conversation on the JLO projects. This is the sanitary sewer and drainage improvements on MLK Drive. We attended a final inspection for the project on January 11th. The punch list was provided to the contractor at that time, and they are working through punch list items, most of which, as of today, have already been addressed. What you have in front of you is the certificate of substantial completion and beginning the one-year warranty period for the project. We will come back at a later date with the certificate of acceptance once all the punch list items are addressed.
So did they regrade the concrete? They tore it out and regraded it?
They did. They tore it out, regraded it in anticipation of the final inspection. Public Works went out, flooded the ditches so we could verify that they do have positive drainage.
Okay. And then the lake that it created with the dam, the concrete damming up the drainage right there, with a 1 4-inch cut, that's what was proposed?
What they ended up doing, so that it's already been completed, they ended up going from joint to joint in the concrete ditch, a few inches down. I drove by it the other day, and it seems to have alleviated the drainage issues.
Okay. And then the dirt at the end, I think that's what the picture is, at the end of the road where it just kind of dives off. That's what the dirt is, to spread that mound out? Is that what that's for?
Which item are you referring to?
The final stabilization, I guess it's called?
Yes. Yeah,
That's at the end?
There was a little bit of areas where vegetation wasn't very established, and it was not, it wasn't stabilized. This is the punch list item was to stabilize it and establish vegetation.
Any questions, comments? Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the certificate of substantial completion as presented.
Motion by Casey. Do we have a second?
I second.
Second by Pat. Motion's debatable, amendable, requires majority vote. All in favor of approving item number 11 as stated, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. And we will approve item number 11 as stated. We will go into executive session at this time, adjourning into closed session in compliance with section 551.001 ETSEQ Texas Government Code, to wit, 551.072 deliberation regarding real property. It is 7:24, and we are adjourned into executive session.
We had been, we walked out the Andrews branch 4 years ago, and that was supposed to be done with not Is that hot? And then, if we can touch it, we're back in the other. Hey, Gary. So, good question. There's nothing. It's deteriorating. It's deteriorating.
Well, yeah, so
Oh, no, I'm talking about further down, like on the property.
Very nice to have met you. You always come to the city.
I'm sorry, I'm looking, through you behind you.
Right.
The zone, or the subdivision ordinance rather, is where the meat of it is.
Okay.
Setbacks are in the zoning ordinance, size of the lot, and the lot frontage requirements in the subdivision ordinance.
So do you have other items in the subdivision ordinance that you're considering changing, other than the lot sizes?
Not offhand, I don't know if any, I'm sure I've got notes on some changes, but I don't.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll get right now.
Because I don't want to change just one,
Small piece.
right.
because I know P and Z needs to review it. So, but I can't think of anything else that we've discussed lately in the ordinance, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
So one of the things that we discussed, I visited with Dave about, was it's not just the size of the lot that we have to kind of look at. It kind of comes down to the square footage of your total lot size, basis depth, the different and green space, I guess is the word for it, to make sure you, I can't think of it right now, to make sure your minimum footage,
Lot coverage.
something like that.
Lot coverage.
Ensuring that basically, if you're going to utilize a smaller lot size and X number of square feet, the open space.
That's what it was, open space.
Yeah.
Yes,
We
open
call
space.
it compensating green space, but it's a matter of, it comes down to the open space.
Right, roger that.
Any others? All right, just one thing I want to say, it's been a pet peeve of mine before. It's very difficult, everybody knows this, management, politicians, taxpayers, it's very difficult to make short-term decisions without clearly seeing a long-term plan. We talked about these issues before, about zoning smartly, about updating commercial, industrial, residential maps, if you will. It's not a sense of urgency necessary, but I'd like to invite management to try to put that a little higher up if we can, because you and Dave, you and I have talked about before, determining a lot of decisions comes on how big do we anticipate that city could get, right? When you're talking about city hall concerns, I mean the whole enchilada, right? A lot of our property is private property, let's face it, right? And then some things we just can't control, but that which we can control, to maximize our tax base somehow, so that we don't have so many residents. And what I'm referring to specifically, and Gary, we haven't even had a chance to sit down and look at the goals, but one that sticks in my head for 2 years now is, we want Montgomery to be a place where the people can live and work and play and worship. And part of that is jobs here. I hate to build a city with all these people coming here and all of them going out there, So, and I'm no expert. I'm the antithesis of an expert. What I do know is we have to find a way to smartly grow somehow, and that seems to be incentives, smart incentives, to get the right kinds of businesses, commercial, manufacturing, whatever it is, to build a tax base. And that's solid for the 1,500 homes and the constituents that are already here. So I'm not, again, that's not an urgency thing, but I would like to see that go up, particularly in anticipation of this very important accounting transition, if you will. Maybe an opportunity to see some things to look at what we can do in the budget planning that lines up with those long-term goals. Does that kind of make sense? That's kind of where I'm at with that. All right? All right. With that, I'll entertain a motion to dismiss.
I make the motion that we adjourn.
We have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor of dismissing, say yes.
Yes.
And we are 8 o'clock dismissed.